four bills: S2695, Parity for Tribal Law Enforcement Act; S3857, Hamul Indian Village Land Transfer Act; S4442, Crow Water Rights Settlement Amendment Act of 2024; and S4505, OK Owinge Rio Chama Water Rights Settlement Act of 2024. S2695 was introduced by Senators Cantwell and Mullen. The bill would improve recruitment and retention of tribal law enforcement officers by making them eligible for certain benefits enjoyed by federal law enforcement, such as pensions, retirement, injury, and death benefits. S3857 was introduced by Senators Padilla and Butler. The bill would place fee land owned by the Hamul Indian Village into trust to provide housing, essential community services, and access to the tribe's cultural landmarks. S4442 was introduced by Senators Tester and Daines. This bill would amend the Crow Tribe Water Rights Settlement Act of 2010 to enable the Crow Tribe to complete clean water and energy development projects as part of its original water rights settlement and deliver piped water to community members on the reservation. S4505 was introduced by Senators Heinrich and Lujan. The bill would resolve the OK Owinge Pueblo water rights claims in the Rio Chama stream system in New Mexico. The bill ratifies and authorizes funding for the water settlement agreement between the tribe, the state of New Mexico, the city of Española, and 5 acequia associations. I will now turn to the Vice Chair for her opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you noted, the bills on the agenda, you've covered the specifics, so I'm not going to repeat what you've covered, but I do want to note a few details about one of the bills that we're considering. This is the Parity for Tribal Law Enforcement Act. This is S2695. I do appreciate Senators Cantwell and Mullen for their work on the bill. I think it's unfortunate Senator Cantwell can't be here today to thank her in person for her leadership on this, but we'll do that for the record. There is no doubt that tribal law enforcement agencies face extraordinary challenges, and we need to do more as a Congress to help. This bill intends to improve hiring and increase retention for tribal law enforcement officers to keep Native communities safe. Numerous commissions and government reports have documented the need for additional resources for law enforcement in Native communities. This is true across the board, including in PL 280 states like mine. In order to ensure that we do not leave behind tribes in PL 280 states on this issue of law enforcement, Senator Cantwell and I have an amendment to S2695 that we're going to be considering today that would make officers that are funded through COPS or other DOJ grants eligible for the parity that we're extending to tribes that receive BIA 638 funding. We're still working through this issue. I recognize we may need further amendments to the text of the bill, but we didn't want to prevent this important measure from moving forward today in committee. So again, my thanks to Senator Cantwell for partnering with me on this amendment and continuing to work with me to ensure that we get it right going forward so all tribes have needed law enforcement, including those in PL 280 states. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I turn it back to you.
Thank you, Vice Chair, and we thank Senator Cantwell. She is chairing the whole Commerce Committee at the exact same time as our committee. Otherwise she would certainly be here. Before I ask senators if they want to make an opening statement, the appropriate time to make a comment on any amendment that you may have or on your particular bill would be as we take them up. But having said that, are there any senators wishing to make an opening statement? Senator Cortez Masto.
Thank you. I want to thank Chairman Schatz and Vice Chair Mikowski for the bills that are before us today. But also, I do want to talk about Senator Cantwell and Senator Mullen's Parity for Tribal Law Enforcement Act. I have heard directly from our tribes in Nevada, this bill is exactly what tribal law enforcement need to maintain consistent and effective agencies. Not only are there unique challenges to attracting qualified officers at tribal law enforcement agencies, listen, they also struggle to compete with other law enforcement agencies to retain these officers. Our Pyramid Lake Paiute Tribes Police Department has told me that the lack of comparable retirement benefits, it's the #1 reason why they lose officers after their first couple of years. So this bipartisan Tribal Law Enforcement Act will absolutely improve tribal police officer recruitment, retention rates, while also streamlining their ability to enforce federal law. I thank you again for hearing this bill amongst the many that we are having today, and thank you.
Senator Tester.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I want to thank you and Chair Mikowski for your team's effort to move forward 4 critical pieces of legislation. And I want to go a little bit further. I don't know that Indian Country has ever had a bigger advocates sitting in the chair and ranking position of this committee. I appreciate your work over the last couple of years. It's been exemplary. I also want to thank the chairman of the Crow Tribe, Chairman White Clay, for his leadership. The Crow Water Rights Settlement Act is a straightforward bill that will ensure that Crow Tribe has the tools and infrastructure they need to deliver clean water to its communities. It amends the original Crow Water Settlement Act that Congress passed back in 2010, a bill that Max Baucus and I had, that would provide the tribe some additional flexibility to develop water infrastructure that is more cost-effective, and it works better for the tribe and it works better for the region. It will also bolster energy development by extending the timeline for the tribe to develop hydropower on the Yellowtail After Bay Dam, which will provide clean energy and it will boost the economy in nearby communities. This committee is also considering an amendment for this bill today. This amendment will make two improvements to the bill. Here's what they do. The first improvement ensures that funds used to prioritize water development over the land acquisition, means water over land. The second improvement ensures that funds in each settlement account are spent as intended and not transferable from one account to another, just common sense. And lastly, as I noted at the hearing for this bill, we're doing all of this with no additional cost, without changing any existing water rights and without reopening the settlement. Today is a good day for the Crow Tribe, and I would urge my colleagues to support this measure. And I want to thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Tester. Senator Daines.
Yeah. Chairman Schatz, thank you. Ranking Member Murkowski as well for including this important bill in the markup. Senator Tester's comments were exactly right. Here's what happened. Back in 2010, Congress passed the Crow Tribe Water Settlement. And since then, the good news is the tribe and BOR have been working to implement it, and they found a better way to do it that will lower cost and actually be much less complicated, deliver higher quality water to their people. Because unfortunately, that original water project that was envisioned in that 2010 bill was found to be infeasible. And it's something we've learned now on these compacts. It's probably best not to be overly prescriptive in the compact around how to deliver the water. Just stay focused on outcomes and let the tribes and the engineers figure out the best way to do that. That's why we're making this minor adjustment to the bill. It's going to provide a cost-effective, low-impact water system, and it also extends a very important hydropower project authorization on the reservation. It does not add any additional cost. In fact, it probably will lower cost. It does not alter any existing water rights. And importantly, it does not open up the compact, which has been agreed to by the state of Montana, the Crow Tribe, and the federal government. So this should be a pretty easy layup this moment. This makes a lot of sense. Let's get this done. I look forward to the committee's consideration of my Crow Revenue Act in the near future. These bills provide certainty and support for communities on the reservation. Chairman Schatz, thanks for your help.
Thank you. We'll now move to the agenda. First, some housekeeping matters related to amendments on today's agenda. Amendment numbers KAT 24619, 24626, and 24629 were not timely filed. Our rules provide for a waiver of the 48-hour rule for filing amendments in advance of a business meeting. I've waived the rule for untimely filed amendments, and the Vice Chair has concurred. So turning to today's business, without objection, I call up S2695. Senator Cantwell and Senator Murkowski filed amendment number KAT 24619. This amendment makes technical corrections to terminology and cross-references to federal retirement programs. It also clarifies that the Department of the Interior's retirement benefits program is voluntary on a tribal officer-by-officer basis, that tribal officers with salaries paid in whole or part by COPS grants or other DOJ grants are eligible, and that tribal officers may participate if their respective Indian tribe has a mandatory retirement age that exceeds that of federal officers. Senator Cantwell has business in the Commerce Committee at this time, so she asked me to enter her written statement on the bill and amendment into the record. Senator Murkowski, would you like to make any additional comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think I included those in my opening remarks, so thank you, and I would hope that members are able to support the bipartisan amendment.
Thank you very much. Any final comments? Hearing none, and without objection, the committee will vote on amendment number KAT 24619. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. The ayes have it, and the amendment is adopted. If there is no further debate, then without objection, the committee will vote to report 2695 as amended. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. The ayes have it, and 2695 is reported with an amendment. Without objection, I call up S3857 on behalf of Senator Padilla. I filed an amendment in the nature of a substitute, number KAT 24626. The ANS revises the introduced bill to account for parcels that have already been taken into trust by BIA and provides for reaffirmation of their trust status. The ANS would also authorize an additional trust acquisition of 1.1 acres that is subject to a pending land swap between the Hamul Indian Village and the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. Hearing no discussion and without objection, the committee will vote on amendment number 24626. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. The ayes have it, and the amendment is adopted. If there's no further debate, then without objection, the committee will vote to report S3857 as amended. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. The ayes have it, and 3857 is ordered reported with an amendment in the nature of a substitute. Without objection, I call up S4442. Senator Tester filed an amendment in the nature of a substitute, number KAT 24629. And now I'll recognize, Senator Tester, I think you have already described the bill. If there are no further comments or discussion, if there's no further discussion, the committee will vote on amendment number KA 24629. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. The ayes have it, and the amendment is adopted. If there is no further debate, then without objection, the committee will vote to report S4442 as amended. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. The ayes have it, and S4442 is ordered reported with an amendment. And lastly, today, without objection, I call up S4505. No amendments have been filed. Senator Lujan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you both to you and to the Vice Chair for today. I'm proud to be the co-lead with Senator Heinrich of the Oke-Owinge Water Rights Settlement, which would ratify the water rights between the Oke-Owinge Pueblo, the state of New Mexico, the city of Española, and 5 acequia associations, and resolve the tribe's water rights in the Rio Chama stream system in New Mexico. When Governor Phillips was last before this committee to testify in support of this legislation, he reminded us of the deep cultural and religious connections between Bosques and our communities. This piece of legislation is part of living up to our trust responsibility to the tribes and as part of the water rights restoration that needs to begin in the Rio Chama and the Bosque. I welcome the committee's consideration of this legislation and look forward to enact it into law, as well as restoring the health of the river and the Bosque for the Pueblo and for other parties. I yield back.
Thank you very, very much, Senator Lujan, for your leadership on this important bill and these important issues. If there's no further discussion, then without objection, the committee will vote to report S4505. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. The ayes have it, and S4505 is reported favorably. I want to thank the members for getting the business of our committee completed expeditiously today, and I ask unanimous consent that the staff be allowed to make technical and conforming changes. There being no objections or further business before the committee, this meeting is adjourned. Good morning. Today, the committee will consider the nomination of the Honorable Patrice H. Kunesh of Minneapolis, Minnesota, to be the chair of the National Indian Gaming Commission for a term of 3 years. The president nominated Ms. Kunesh on July 23rd, 2024. She currently serves as the Commissioner of the Administration for Native Americans at the Administration for Children and Families in the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. Before we begin, I'd like to welcome Ms. Kunesh and thank her for joining us and thank her for always saying yes when being asked to serve. This hearing is an important first step in carrying out the Senate's constitutional obligation to provide advice and consent. It's an opportunity to learn how, if confirmed, Ms. Kunesh plans to carry out and uphold the United States' trust responsibility to tribes and oversight function of the National Indian Gaming Commission over Indian gaming. It's our duty to establish a record of the nominee's policy views on Indian gaming, how she sees her role as chair, her plans to maintain the integrity of the agency she would lead, and how she would engage with tribal nations on a government-to-government basis. The Indian Gaming Regulatory Act established the NIGC as an independent bipartisan regulatory agency within the Department of the Interior. The chair of the NIGC has important statutory powers that are critical to the regulation of Indian gaming, including the power to approve Class 2 and Class 3 gaming ordinances or resolutions, the power to impose fines and order the temporary closure of gaming facilities, and finally, the power to approve management contracts for Class 2 and Class 3 gaming. This committee considered the nomination of former NIGC Chair Simmermeyer, who was confirmed by the full Senate in 2019. The position of chair has been unfilled since the resignation in February of 2024. It's been almost 40 years since Congress passed the Indian Gaming Regulatory Act. Gaming technology has rapidly advanced over the decades, from electronic bingo to online sports betting, and it continues to evolve quickly. Technology holds great opportunity, but with it, our regulatory challenges change and grow. The NIGC must adapt, and its chair, as the top Indian gaming regulator, must exercise their statutory powers while staying true to the Commission's mission to promote tribal economic development and self-determination in their gaming activities. This is no easy task, but Ms. Kunesh is a proven leader who can and will achieve this important balance. The committee reported her nomination as ANA Commissioner favorably, and the Senate confirmed her by a vote of 57 to 35 in February of 23. Ms. Kunesh continues to serve in that capacity and has done so with distinction. I'm confident that Ms. Kunesh will bring the same strong leadership and ethics to the position as she does in her role as ANA Commissioner. The committee has received endorsements from tribes and tribal organizations supporting Ms. Kunesh's confirmation, and I've made them all part of the record today. I look forward to considering this important nomination and working with the Vice Chair and my colleagues to move this nomination through our committee. Vice Chair Murkowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Ms. Kunesh, welcome back to the committee, and congratulations on your nomination. As the chairman has noted, you're no stranger here in the Senate Indian Affairs Committee in your current capacity as Commissioner for Administration for Native Americans. You've appeared before us on our oversight hearing on public safety needs. In 2019, you participated in a committee hearing to examine lending opportunities for tribal home ownership. I think it's fair to say that public safety and housing are top issues, certainly in my state, and I know it is for my fellow colleagues here in the committee as well. So thank you for your work on these challenging issues and your continued commitment to serve. I do think it's important to talk a little bit about the commission that you're nominated to. As the chair has noted, the commission was established by the Indian Gaming Regulatory Act of 1988. It's an independent federal regulatory agency housed at DOI. The commission has a big job. It's responsible for protecting the integrity of Indian gaming from mismanagement and infiltration by criminal elements. It does this by monitoring tribal gaming activities at more than 500 casinos in 29 states, conducting site inspections and processing background checks on tribal gaming employees. The NIGC also plays an important role in safeguarding gaming revenue for tribes, which must go towards supporting tribal governments and social services. And it's a big, big business. Revenues topped $41.9 billion last year. This is an increase of $1 billion in gross revenues from last year. And as the chair has noted, the chairman of the commission is a pretty powerful position with exclusive authority to levy fines and issue closure orders to tribal casinos that would violate NIGC regulations. The chair is also responsible for approving gaming ordinances and contracts between tribes and casino management firms. The mission of the NIGC takes on added significance given the tremendous changes that are occurring in tribal gaming industry today. In recent years, tribes have entered commercial gaming markets that were unimaginable when IGRA was enacted back in 1988. Today, several tribes own casinos along the Las Vegas Strip. Tribes have also entered the sports betting world. Some tribes offer sports betting apps for mobile devices, which is a rapidly growing industry. And I think it's a testament to tribes in IGRA that tribes have achieved this level of success in the gaming industry. But we know that there are bad actors out there that might threaten this success. Tribal casinos are targets for cyber criminals, including ransomware attacks that have caused millions of dollars in losses. And casinos, tribal and non-tribal, have long attracted human trafficking and illicit drug activity that prey on our nation's most vulnerable. So more has to be done to address the threats. I think we would all acknowledge that. So I'm looking forward to hearing from you this morning on your views about these matters during this hearing. And again, thank you for your willingness to step up to this position.
Thank you very much, Vice Chair. Senator Smith.
Well, thank you. I want to thank the chair and the vice chair in this committee for holding this nomination hearing today to consider the nomination of Patrice Kunesh, a descendant of the Standing Rock Lakota, to serve as chair of the National Indian Gaming Commission. Mr. Chair and Vice Chair and committee colleagues, I've known Patrice for many long years. We've done much work together, and I can tell you, though you don't need me to tell you this because she's been before our committee before, that she is an exemplary public servant, and I know will do an excellent job in this role. As you've noted, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Kunesh currently leads the Administration for Native Americans at the Department of Health and Human Services, but this is just her latest role in her lifetime of service to Indian country. Just in the federal government, she's served in the Department of Interior, Department of Agriculture, and the Minneapolis Fed Bank Centers for Indian Country Development, as well as the Department of Justice. And at the Fed, Patrice oversaw some of the most important research that we've seen about the impact of gaming on tribal economies. So she knows firsthand the importance of gaming. And as attorney to the Mashantucket Pequot, she saw the origin of gaming and how it works at the tribal level. So I think that you have an outstanding portfolio of experience to bring to this role, and I'm very grateful for your willingness to continue to serve Indian country in this new capacity. Thank you so much, and welcome to the committee.
Thank you very much, Senator Smith. Are there any other members wishing to make an opening statement? If not, Ms. Kunesh, how do I pronounce your name exactly? Kunesh, okay. Ms. Kunesh, please rise and raise your right hand. Do you solemnly affirm that the testimony you give today shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth under penalty of perjury? Thank you. Please be seated. I will remind you that we have your full written testimony, which will be made part of the official hearing record. Please keep your statement to no more than 5 minutes so that members have time for questions. Ms. Kunesh, please proceed with your opening statement.
Good morning, Chairman Schatz, Vice Chairman Murkowski, and distinguished members of the committee. Thank you so much for the opportunity to appear before you today as President Biden's nominee for the chair of the National Indian Gaming Commission. I grew up in a small town in central Minnesota. I'm the 7th of 13 siblings, the mother of 2 daughters, Unchi, a grandmother to the delightful Lucy Wintermoon, and they are my pride and joy. 2 strong influences have shaped my 3-decade career in federal Indian law and policy. One was my grandfather, and the other was my father. My grandfather was born in 1902 on the Fort Berthold Reservation in North Dakota, home of the 3 affiliated tribes, Mandan, Hidatsa, and Arikara. And he spent his early years at Fort Yates on the Standing Rock Sioux Reservation. He was enrolled at Standing Rock, as was my mother. And like most Native families at the time, his was impacted by painful separations due to federal Indian boarding school policies. It wasn't until 1924 that Congress passed the Indian Citizenship Act to confirm U.S. citizenship status on Native people, including their right to vote and own property. By then, my great-grandmother made the courageous move to Minnesota in hopes of a more stable life. My grandfather remained close to his family on Standing Rock, and his mother was buried there. It feels remarkable to me that his granddaughter was confirmed by the Senate in 2003 as the Commissioner of the Administration for Native Americans at the Department of Health and Human Services by a bipartisan vote. My father's work for local governments, both county and city attorney, involved cases involving social services and the criminal justice system. He was a strong advocate for Native youth and Native men who found themselves homeless or incarcerated due to federal Indian relocation and child removal policies. Their narratives, my grandfather's devotion to his homelands and my father's pursuit of justice, as well as my mother's ardent love for family, instilled in me a strong sense of vocation to become an advocate for Native rights. I began my law career at the Native American Rights Fund, a public interest law firm whose mission is to protect Native rights, resources, and lifeways. Then, as in-house counsel to the Mashantucket Pequot Tribal Nation in Connecticut, I helped the tribe establish a judicial and regulatory infrastructure that continues to support its economic development, primarily centered around its gaming operations. As a professor, I taught courses on federal Indian law and gaming at the University of South Dakota School of Law. Then President Obama appointed me to serve as the Deputy Solicitor for Indian Affairs at the Department of the Interior, and later as Deputy Undersecretary for Rural Development at the Department of Agriculture, where I focused housing, broadband, and community infrastructure investments on reservation communities. And at the Minneapolis Fed, I led the Center for Indian Country Development, an economic policy research initiative that supports the prosperity of Native Americans. And in my current role as Commissioner of the Administration for Native Americans, I have the great privilege of making vital investments in Native communities to enhance their social and economic well-being of Native Americans, Alaskan Natives, Native Hawaiians, and Indigenous people of the Pacific Islands. Indian gaming provides indispensable financial resources to catalyze reservation economies and contributes to essential services for the health and well-being of Native peoples. Importantly, it also promotes nation building and good governance. If confirmed, I would focus my attention on 3 areas. First, fulfilling the mission of NIGC in promoting tribal economic development and maintaining the critical integrity of the gaming industry. Second, I would endeavor to mitigate risks within the influx of new technologies and gaming formats, including online gaming and artificial intelligence. Third, I would be committed to good governance practices within the NIGC and ensure that NIGC has sufficient resources to fulfill its mission. It would be a great honor to extend my service to Indian country as the next chair of the National Indian Gaming Commission and help lead this agency into the new era of Indian gaming. Thank you for your time today, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much. I'll defer to the Senator from Minnesota, Senator Smith.
Well, thank you very much, Senator Schatz. That's very kind of you. And thank you again, Ms. Kunesh, for being with us today. I appreciate your opening statement and also the ways in which the Chair and Vice Chair highlighted some of the opportunities as well as some of the risks around Indian gaming. And you have a unique perspective, having been engaged in this for quite a long time. So let me just dive in a bit on what you identified as your sort of second priority, which is to minimize the risks of new technology. Could you talk a bit about how you see that from the perspective of cybersecurity and also artificial intelligence? With cybersecurity, one of the most pressing issues in gaming today, and tribes are in the difficult position of trying to react to existing threats and also prepare for new emerging threats. So could you talk a bit about the state of play as you see it around cybersecurity issues in tribal gaming and what actions you would recommend we should be thinking about as we address this challenge?
Well, thank you for that really important question, Senator. And I do see that technology has completely changed the way that the games are being played, literally, with online gaming, sports betting, the platforms in which we actually handle gaming, handheld digital devices as well as remote gaming. So with new technologies, there's an urgent need to that the NIGC stay ahead of the technology with its regulations. And by that, I see the need to really look and take a strong view of what risks are occurring around the safety and security of gaming. I think that's one of the most important responsibilities of the NIGC. We know that in just a few decades, online gaming has surged in both popularity and profitability. And along with online gaming comes new platforms for financial engagement, financial transactions. So tribal gaming operations are now are holding vast amounts of data, personal, sensitive information on their customers, but also responsible for ensuring the security of financial transactions. So if confirmed for this position, I think it would be one of my top concerns, my top priorities, to do an assessment of NIGC to evaluate their technology infrastructure, their technology work and programs, to make sure that the full risk assessment is done to identify any weaknesses. We know also with the $41.9 billion, as Senator Murkowski mentioned, the gaming profitability is increasing, and that also weighs on a significant responsibility to make sure that the gaming industry, which has now become a financial industry, is safe and secure. In my experience working at the Federal Reserve Bank of Minneapolis, cybersecurity was their number one concern, and investments could not, were ever increasing, not just in terms of financial investments, but the infrastructure around ensuring the systems are safe, secure, and reliable. And we do know that reputation is everything in this industry, and so any breach would cause tremendous damage. So I take that very seriously, and it would be a top priority for me.
Thank you, thank you. Could you also address, when we met last week, I think it was last week, we talked a bit about the impact and potential impacts of artificial intelligence in gaming. Could you just address that as well in the little bit of time that we have left?
Yes, certainly. Artificial intelligence is changing everything that we do in terms of our engagement and the artificial ways that, not that I understand it completely, but the technology within AI is really changing the way we engage and acquiring that knowledge, pulling us further and further into certain behaviors. But it's also changing the way that we do business. We can use it in a smart way, learning to do things more efficiently, more uniformly, more standardized. We can also use artificial intelligence to analyze data, and that data analytics is an incredible tool to understanding the risk on the other side of the gaming industry. So I think that the regulatory standards around technology generally, online gaming, AI, really need to be a strong focus of the NIGC.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Vice Chair Murkowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Kanish, thank you for responding to the question about cybersecurity. I think that overlays over so much of what we're discussing about when we're talking about the threats to gaming. But I think we recognize that while the primary influence of NIGC is to ensure the integrity of Indian gaming, it's also to protect it from criminal influence. And as I suggested in my opening comments, I worry about those who have been targeted for human and sex trafficking. Unfortunately, tribal and non-tribal casinos have been known to be targeted for that. The Not Invisible Commission that Senator Cortez Masto and I worked on recommended addressing this through awareness and targeted prevention at casinos. I do understand that NIGC partners with tribes, BIA, and DHS on initiatives like the Blue Campaign Toolbox that educates the tribal casino and hotel managers on how you spot and then how you report suspected human trafficking at their establishments. Can you speak a little bit to this issue and whether you think there are other initiatives that NIGC could look to on this issue of human trafficking and the challenges, and also whether there is more that some of your partner agencies can be doing to address these issues. Unfortunately, those of us on the committee here know that our Native populations are at far too high a risk when it comes to being potential victims of trafficking and human abuse.
Thank you for that question, Senator. And I do know that you have been a real champion in this space as well, and it's made a difference. In my experience, having worked in this space for quite a while, human trafficking, missing, murdered Indigenous women, violence against women are some of the worst scourges in Indian country today. And unfortunately, Native women, Native people tend to be the most vulnerable and susceptible to these terrible situations. I take the responsibility to prevent violence against women and addressing MMIP issues very seriously. In my current role as ANA Commissioner, I serve on the Not Invisible Act Commission. And I was part of the hearings. I was also part of the drafting of the report and recommendations. And very specifically, we targeted my agency, the Administration for Children and Families, with more than 100 recommendations to focus on these areas, to intervene and prevent, to take action, and then to support the survivors and the victims with appropriate services. So if I were confirmed for this position, I would like to build on the work of NIGC to strengthen the focus of their activities in this area. It's part of the NIGC's overall public safety responsibility to ensure that the gaming premises are safe and secure. And that means safe and secure from illegal activity like human trafficking. I did ask a colleague of mine who oversees the Office on Trafficking in Persons at ACF about what we know about the intersection of human trafficking and gaming, and there's not much data on it, unfortunately. I think that's one area that I would like to focus on, is understanding that data better between DHS and DOJ and the work that we do on the ground at ACF to really understand what is the magnitude or the prevalence. We have had...
Can I ask you, and I know you've got to get confirmed before you can do any of all this, but I appreciate what you have just said there with these data gaps. And that was one of the things that we learned very, very clearly in the work that we did together on the Not Invisible. So much of the challenge that we faced is we didn't know what we didn't know. And when it came to murdered, missing Indigenous, it was actually the report out of Canada that first precipitated our the investigation by the Seattle Seattle Institute. I'm drawing a blank on the Seattle Indian Health Board. But we've learned a lot since then about these gaps in data. And so if you are confirmed, I would hope that you not only would commit to trying to understand a little bit more about these gaps, but then reporting back to the committee with us on that to see if there isn't more that we need to be doing from a legislative response. But I think that this is an issue that we need to know more about, to know the extent of the issue, and if there are different avenues that we can work to address it. So I look forward to that.
Absolutely, Senator. I would very much appreciate the opportunity to look at this and to work with you and report back to the full committee.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Vice Chair Murkowski. A couple of my questions were taken, so I'm going to go in a slightly different direction. The good discussion about cybersecurity and hardening the defenses of gaming operations. I get all of that. I guess I'm wondering whether just bluntly, my intuition is that now that gambling is ubiquitous, that there may be small casinos that end up having difficulty staying afloat on the brick and mortar side. And so I just want to talk about the sort of long-term fiscal risks for tribal governments. I get that there's been a spike in because everyone is gambling more, but I also think that that could sort in a way that consolidates to the big dogs and away from some tribal governments who are doing apps and all the rest. So I think they're surviving and even thriving now. But to me, the long-term trajectory, to the extent that you've got your destinations like Las Vegas and a few other spots, and my understanding is a lot of their revenue is now non-gaming revenue, and it's sort of an experience. But the idea that you would fly into, I'm not going to name a town, but you would fly into a city, you have a conference, and then you kind of go on Google and find the nearest casino, which is likely to be on reservation land. I'm not sure that the market is going to stay the same, and I'm quite worried about that. And I'm wondering whether my intuition is wrong or whether we know the answer to that.
Chairman Schatz, I think your intuition is spot on, and I think it's something that we really need to take a look at, because gaming revenue is so vitally important to tribes and to tribal economies for those essential services. My understanding is that the changes in technology are making gaming, as you said, more ubiquitous, but the interaction really a very important component as well, and not only where it's done, but how it's done. I should say how it's done and where it's done. My understanding of the range of new gaming formats like sports betting is also opening up opportunities for smaller tribes, maybe in remote locations, to be able to participate and diversify their gaming operations. Of course, that depends on the state law in the state in which the tribe is located. I also see that gaming in itself has to diversify in terms of the human experience, the brick and mortar facilities. It's a destination, as you mentioned, and they go there, customers go there for relaxation, entertainment, and so forth. So as much as it's becoming popular and profitable, from an NIGC perspective, we want to make sure that that across the board, the tribes are well regulated in whatever form of gaming they do.
So I know you're the regulator and not the promoter, but I'm wondering whether you consider it an appropriate function for the agency that you will lead to kind of do a market analysis. I'm not persuaded. It's not that I'm disagreeing with you. I'm just not sure we know.
I agree.
And I think that there are certainly states where the competitive advantage that a tribe may have is as simple as it's the only place it's legal, right? And if it's legal pretty much everywhere now, at least using your iPhone, to me, I'm a little more worried than others about what this is going to mean over the long term. And if it's not your agency, then let's get our heads together and figure out who can do some analysis and figure out, is there a path forward to increase profitability and more scale because the internet is going to make this available to everybody and tribes are well positioned? That's the optimistic scenario. There's another scenario where, like I said, private equity just says, we're going to consolidate this darn thing. We're going to have the best app, the cheapest app, the lowest percentages that we take off the top, and we're going to just get to scale. And anyone who wants to do sports betting is going to use the app that's in the App Store that is the easiest and most commonly found, and not go to a tribal app. So I'm worried. I'm not sure anyone else is worried. So I hope I'm wrong. I don't mind being wrong on this one, but let's do some analysis and get some smart people who understand the industry in the room to figure out whether we're about to, fall off a cliff as it relates to gaming revenue.
I definitely agree. A market analysis is appropriate and likely necessary to really understand where this is going in the next few years. One of the things that the NIGC does do is provide training and technical assistance. So to the extent this new technology is changing dramatically, the state of gaming. I think there would be some discourse and dialogue about what that impact means.
Okay, and I would just encourage anybody who's watching this, if I've got it wrong, just email my staff and
Oh, good.
I'll be happy to read it. Senator Hoeven.
Thanks for being here today. Thanks for coming by and visiting with me yesterday. Appreciate it very much. And like Senator Smith said, it's good to have you coming from our part of the world. So we appreciate that very well with your ties to North Dakota, South Dakota, and Minnesota. So a couple questions. What would be your priorities if confirmed? What's your 1, 2, 3 priorities?
Priorities. Number one would be getting in and taking a look at the staff and the resources the NIGC has. I understand there's about 130 employees that oversee this almost $42 billion industry, working very closely with over 6,000 tribal regulators as well. So I'd really want to get an understanding of how the organization is situated and resourced. Number two, I'd really want to take a look at the state of the regulations. We recently had new regulations promulgated that added online gaming options to tribal gaming operations. I'd really want to know how those are being implemented and any impact from those new regulations. And third, I would really want to take a look at the public safety areas that we talked about earlier. The work that NIGC is doing around human trafficking awareness and prevention, looking at the partners that we have and determining, if we can do more and how do we actually really delve into that area, lean in hard.
You mentioned 6,000 tribal regulators. How do you, what's your thought in terms of building some kind of connection or rapport with them? It's a lot of folks.
Pardon me?
You mentioned 6,000 tribal regulators in the industry. How do you build some kind of relationship or rapport there with so many?
So the way I see it, and my experience as being in-house a counsel with the Mashantucket Pequot tribe, the tribal regulators are on the ground at the forefront. They're the primary regulators of their gaming operations. They're essential to ensuring the integrity of the operation and ensuring that the tribes are the primary beneficiaries of the gaming revenue. So the NIGC is the federal regulator, with the oversight, audit, investigation authority. I do see it as a partner. We need to make sure that with the 527 gaming operations, that again we have the sufficient resources and properly enforcing the gaming ordinances. But I do see it as a partnership and a necessary alliance to make sure that what's happening on the ground is comports with the regulations.
I think the artificial intelligence issue was brought up by some of the committee members earlier, and you referenced it as well. NIGC has a policy regarding AI. Have you had a chance to look at that? And I guess, how would you approach that AI issue, both in terms of what they've done, and if you haven't had a chance to look at that yet, it might be hard to differentiate. But that's a big issue. It's a tough issue. It's complicated. How are you going to approach it?
Well, thank you for that question. And I'm not at the NIGC, so I'm not aware of how they're approaching AI. But from my experience, again, going back to the Minneapolis Federal Reserve and the work that we're doing in the federal government, where AI is coming into every facet, every component, every function of what we do, we need to know what it is, how it works, and to make sure that there are human safeguards around whatever product comes of it. It can do really well in a lot of ways, but the margin of error, because it's artificial, I think is pretty great. And how we use it and apply it, I think we need to know that there are safeguards in place.
If somebody asks you, are you in favor of expanding Indian gaming or not expanding it, and I understand your role as a regulator, but how do you answer that? How do you address that?
Well,
Because it's a very dynamic environment, right?
It's a very dynamic environment.
That is a challenge right now, figuring that out.
Well, thank you for that, Senator. It is a very dynamic environment, and I go back and think about the Indian Gaming Regulatory Act, which provided, I thought, a very, very good framework and blueprint for addressing any sort of functions of gaming, and surprisingly well, it's folded in online gaming and digital gaming and sports betting. So I haven't done any sort of full assessment of the act, but what I see and what I have a sense of is that it's working well. But what I would be committed to, Senator, is understanding, again, the dynamics and the pressures and the tensions on the law, and working with you in this committee to see if there need to be any legislative changes going forward.
Thank you.
Before I turn to the senior senator from Nevada, I just wanted to compliment her and Senator Rosen on their work on both the Tribal Law Enforcement Act and this Bureau of Justice issue that we are having, not just in Nevada, but a couple of other states. We're not done yet, but we're making good progress, and I really appreciate your leadership. Senator Cortez Masto.
Thank you. Thank you to the chair as well for the help that you've provided us in addressing this issue in Nevada. It's great to see you. Thanks for visiting with me, and congratulations on your nomination.
Thank you.
There's no doubt. I think you're well qualified based on your background, the conversations that we've had, particularly around Nevada. So as somebody who's born and raised and actually worked with the attorneys who represented our Gaming Control Board and Gaming Commission, I have an appreciation for the work that you're going to be doing. So I thank you for taking this on. My first question, though, goes back to what Senator Hoeven talked about. In Nevada, having a gaming license, it's a privilege. And with that privilege comes background investigation and auditing. We have a gaming control board and a gaming commission. Commission does the licensing, control board does the auditing. You're doing both, and you have a small staff. In Nevada, our auditors, there's probably about, right now in the gaming control board, last time I looked, about 98 in total, and there's 144 casinos. What you just talked about, and correct me if I'm wrong, you have a total of 121 full-time employees, and you are covering over 500 tribally owned casinos. That's a big task. Not just the licensing piece of it and the background checks, but the auditing, which is what we want to maintain the integrity of Indian gaming industry. I would hope as you get there that you would come back and talk to us if you need more resources. This is key as we are moving into the conversation that we just talked about around sports betting, online betting, sports wagering. These are new areas, even for Nevada, as we go into some of the online gaming, things that we are learning and our commissions are actively engaged in. As you continue to move through this process, please come back to us and talk to us about the needs that you have, okay?
Absolutely, and thank you for raising that, Senator Cortez Masto. I do believe that the resources at NIGC are absolutely critical, again, to ensuring the integrity, safeguarding the public safety, and so forth. And it is my commitment, one of my top priorities, to really assess the need for additional staffing. One of the, I think, brilliant things that the NIGC can do is raise fees on a scale of, more profitability, more funds for the NIGC to pay for increased needs of the Gaming Commission. And with increased responsibilities or a dynamic gaming environment, that may be needed. But I will definitely come back and share with you my findings and work with you in case there are any changes needed.
Thank you. And then if you would talk about, because I think we've seen the benefits, obviously you and I have talked about the benefits to our tribal communities across the country about having the opportunity to operate casinos and the revenue it brings into those communities and the benefit it provides. And part of your mandate on the Gaming Commission really also is to help drive that economic development, find that balance, correct? Can you talk a little bit why this is so important?
It is definitely important that, one, tribes are the primary beneficiaries of the gaming revenue, but also that tribes are able to use those funds to support essential governmental services. In my experience, again, going back to working with the Pequot tribe and other tribes, these funds help support early childhood development programs, elder care services, educational scholarships. They support the infrastructure of the tribe itself to give it the backbone to be able to function as a tribe, to exercise its tribal sovereignty. And one of the most, I think, important demonstrations of tribal sovereignty is the tribal courts. And with the increase of gaming and the growth of gaming, for example, with the Pequot tribe, we saw a really fundamental infrastructure develop around its judicial system. And that supported not only the customers and patrons and employees of the gaming enterprise, it provided a judicial system for the tribal members themselves.
Yeah, it has made such a difference I've seen across the country. I'm going to end with this. I agree with Senator Murkowski. The more information and data and education we can bring to our casinos and these types of establishments around human trafficking and the prevention of human trafficking and helping victims of human trafficking, I'm all for. I know you were on the commission, and I thank you for your work there. That's why I'm pleased that you're going to carry that with you into this new position as well. It is key for us to really gather the data, to have an understanding, but the education piece of that, everybody has a role to play, including our operators. And so if there's an opportunity to continue that work where you are in this new position, we look forward to working with you.
Well, thank you. I definitely support that, and also to thank the Senate committee for its work on law enforcement and public safety as well. Jurisdiction in Indian country is very complex, and we do need more tribal law enforcement, and we do need coordination with DOJ and DHS when needed, and local law enforcement as well. So it's an all-of-government approach to ensure that reservations and Native people and the patrons of these facilities are safe and secure and protected as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. If there are no more questions from our members for the nominee, members may also submit follow-up written questions for the record. And if we could do that promptly, that would be excellent. I'll ask the nominee to respond fully and promptly to any follow-up questions, especially if you want to be confirmed quickly. And also to meet with any remaining committee members who may wish to meet with you. The hearing record will be open for 1 week. We want to thank you for your time and your testimony today. This hearing is adjourned.
Thank you.